The UN climate change talks in Durban, South Africa enters the second week with European Union negotiators calling for quick cuts for carbon emissions. In Africa, energy consumption is on the rise along with economic growth, but the continent is at the crossroads of the old legacy energy sources and newer clean technologies. I recently spoke about this with Mr. Lutz Weischer, a research analyst with the World Resources Institute's Climate and Energy Program.
So what we know from all countries that have developed economically is that access to electricity is, I would almost say, the #1 driver of economic growth. It certainly is one of the most important enabling factors, and we see that in all African nations, that the demand for energy access grows for economic development. And at the same time, we have large portions of Africa where there is no access to energy at all. 58% of Africans don't have access to electricity right now. But then for those who do have electricity access, there's a challenge of making that more stable and reliable.
A continent like Africa that is now starting to really move on to the path of economic growth, how can there be these adjustments in harnessing energy from all the elements that exist, but at the same time watch for the preservation of the environment?
Renewable energies offer a way to meet these different challenges at the same time. So they're non-polluting. They are usually locally available. You don't have to import them and spend your foreign reserves on paying the bills for those. And they can provide, and they provide modern energy services. The good news is that increasingly it's becoming economically viable to go with renewable energies rather than fossil fuels. Africa could either be the last adopter of outdated technologies by going the fossil fuel route, or the first mover on the forefront of this new clean energy revolution that we're in the midst of.
Just a little bit clarification here. When you're talking about renewable energy, for those who may not be so aware of the different terminologies, here we're talking about what?
When we say renewable energy, we usually count 6 different sources, which are hydropower, large and small, wind power, solar power, biomass, geothermal, and then the sort of catch-all of ocean energy, which is both energy from the waves as well as from the tides. So these 6 sources are all included in renewable energy. For 2 of them, the story is a bit more complicated. That's hydro and biomass. For hydro, large hydropower, while it's renewable, creates also a lot of problems in terms of having to relocate people. Not all large hydropower I would count as clean energy because they sometimes have very serious environmental impacts. But hydro is a part of renewable energy.
Looking across the continent of Africa, for example, I mean, you look at that landscape, we have countries that are in really dry areas, the desert areas, semi-arid areas. What can a country consider before they decide to invest in a particular area of energy production?
The first step every country has to take is a step of planning and developing a strategy. In order to do that, you need to understand your resource base. So assessing how much insolation you have, how much solar resources you have in your country, where the wind blows, how fast it blows, how much biomass there is available, making sure that you only count biomass that doesn't compete with other uses. If you look across the different renewable technologies, you can usually identify a mix for every country that would work. A coastal country might do more wind energy. A desert country might do more solar. You know, Germany is the largest solar market in the world, yet has the solar insolation of Alaska. If you look at the solar maps, the sun really isn't that strong in Germany. It's that much stronger in some African countries. So with a fraction of the resources Germany had to use to build that success, you could probably do some pretty great things in the solar in solar energy in Africa.
If you can just give us a sense of how far back the Germans discovered that this would be the best way to go, and what it took for the Germans. If, let's say, an African is listening to this conversation, could say, yes, we could borrow that as a model that can be used in our country.
It's about a clear statement of political will and aligning all the different pieces to reflect that political will. So it's really about the predictability, about the stability. Germany set targets and said, okay, this is what we want to achieve. This is the share of renewable energy we want in our power mix. And we are going to make sure that our energy laws reflect that. We're going to make sure that we train the technicians we need to develop these technologies, the engineers, the technicians we need to install them. We're going to make sure that there's financing available by helping banks understand what these technologies mean, by providing some money for loans to investors so they could invest. So really setting a target and then making sure that everything you do is aligned towards that target.
Lutz Weischer is a research analyst with the World Resources Institute's Climate and Energy Program.